So if everybody could rise for the pledge. First up, student council.
Turn microphones on. Sorry.
Hello. Thank you for having me back. Natalie could not make it tonight, unfortunately. But we have talked about a lot recently. So our field trip was 2 Thursdays ago. We went to the American Dream Mall, as you know. It was really fun. We had a great time. Hope to go next year. On May 9th, we are having our spring market, which is the first time we're having this. It's a mix between a vendor fair, craft fair. There's going to be games, food trucks. It's going to be really fun. We've already had 9 slots filled, and we are hoping to fill upwards of 30. We've only had our registration out for about a day now, so we're looking at pretty good numbers. Tomorrow is our student leadership conference. 8 students are going to be going and talking to other student council members from other schools, talking about other ideas that we can use to improve our school, spread the things that we've done that have worked really well. It's really fun, and hopefully you will learn a lot. We've also talked about a lot of other fundraisers and events, maybe having an assembly. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be talking about. We've mainly been talking about our market, but that will be in the near future. And then this Friday, we have our blood drive. I believe we have 26 students donating blood, which is great. And then we've had 2 out of our 3 Pops concerts. Our last is our band concert, which is tomorrow. That's all.
Can you tell us more about the market?
Yeah, so it's
Open to the public?
yeah. There used to be like a craft fair that we would have here, and we thought of bringing that back. And it's really easy. There's just people online would sign up to buy a spot. It's about 2 parking lots, 2 parking spaces, and then I believe it's $25 that they buy, and then people can come in completely free and just shop around, play some games. Really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Moving on to approval of the draft minutes, I believe everybody was here. Can I get a motion? Any changes? Motion to approve. RP, second. Robert, all those in favor? Public forum. Residents, students, employees, and business representatives of the Greenbush Central School District may address the board on matters concerning programs and or operations of the district, other than matters involving personnel. Members of the board do not directly respond to citizen concerns during the public forum. If a response is appropriate, either the president or superintendent will contact the individual. Those persons listening to address the board will be recognized by the chair of the meeting and should state for the record their name and address or affiliation with the district. If the board would wish to infringe upon free speech protections, it must be stressed that the visitors forum is not deemed to be important. The board president will conduct the forum for the orderly and efficient operation of board business. In addition, any remarks which may be considered defamatory or stigmatizing are prohibited and will be declared out of order. All comment shall be limited to 5 minutes. Tonight we have Mr. Schwartz.
Standing or seated?
Patients in microphones.
Very comfortable.
President Turner, good to see you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board tonight. And Superintendent Coates, I want to thank you for acknowledging the email I sent you on the same topic. My name is Will Schwartz. I live at 4 Marble Road in East Greenbush. I am the parent of a kindergartner at Janae Elementary. I came here tonight to just raise awareness around concerns that some parents and I have around class sizes at Janae. And I don't think class sizes are a unique concern to parents at Janae, but at Janae being the largest of the elementary schools in the district, sometimes we suffer because of our own success of being the biggest and the best. I also want to acknowledge our principal, Mr. Grignon, who's behind me, I think, who does an excellent job leading the institution. My son had a lot of anxiety about kindergarten, and it's the leadership from the top that's made it a warm and safe and inviting place for my son, and he's thriving. So for that, we're grateful. That being said, at present, the current average class size at Janae generally is the largest across the district. It's about 20.6 students per class. This is across all grades K through 5. This is based on data that we got from the PTO that I think was current as of last academic year. At Red Mill, the next largest school in the district, that's 20.3 students. And then as you trickle down to DPS, it's down to 19.2 students per class. A difference of 1.4 students per class does not seem that concerning. But when we drill down further to candidly what is my concern, which is first grade next year, where my son will go, those numbers become a little bit more concerning. Right now, the average first grade class at Janae is 24 students per class compared to 16.3 at Belltown. That means that my son's class, if things hold steady and their class size, which was about 75 this year, moves into 3 classes next year, they will be facing an average class size of 25 per class. It is without question that that would not be defined as equitable by anybody. Understanding that the district is perpetually dealing with budget crises. I work in government. I understand the constraints. I also recognize that over the last couple of years, the state has met its obligation. Under the CFE court decision, districts have seen a record investment of school aid. And we certainly pay our fair share of taxes in East Greenbush, but we're proud to because of the product that we get for that. So that being said, I think that the data speaks for itself. In the note that I sent to Dr. Coates, I was selective in choosing data from the School Superintendents Association by design. And they've been clear since the 1980s. They recognize that striving for closer to 15-to-1 class sizes is aspirational. Again, recognizing budget constraints, we know it's not always possible, but we're close at Belltop, and DPS is not too far off. Smaller class sizes result in better test scores, higher test scores in general, better participation in class, improved behavior, something very, very of concern to me for my son, and allows teachers to utilize the skills in their training to the maximum extent practically. We know it's important for teacher morale, and teachers have better morale. We also see better outcomes for our students. So for all the reasons stated above, recognizing that this decision, as Dr. Coates pointed out in his response, is not yet made. There's a budget to be voted upon. We have enrollments all the way up until the whistle into September. I just asked for the board's consideration. Then when you look at the district, to not look at equal decisions across the elementary schools and across the district generally, but to make sure that we're being equitable to our students and ensuring that because we live at 4 Marble Road and not further out in the district at one of the smaller elementary schools, that we're not given a disproportionate share of the district's resources. I thank you all again for what you do and for the incredible environment that you provide our children. I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
I'm Sabrina Murphy. I'm a teacher at Janae, and I'm just here because I wanted to thank the board. Last weekend, you helped us go through a state competition. I'm Theater Mind. I'm one of the coaches, and I really am truly thankful for you supporting our creative problem-solving team. The kids had a wonderful time. They did not do as well as they wanted to, but it was still a very valuable lesson to all of them on a much bigger scale. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Powell. My family and I live at 71 Brinker Drive South in Rensselaer, New York. We used to be Belltop District, and when the district lines changed, we got moved over to Janae. And initially, I was a little disappointed because everybody says, "Well, Belltop, it's so amazing." But I have to first say I couldn't be happier with where we landed here at Janae. I am also here this evening to talk about the numbers for first grade, the same as Mr. Schwartz. I am a parent of 3 children in the district, 2 of whom currently attend Janae. I am asking you to respectfully consider the addition of an elementary teaching position specifically for first grade at Janae in the 2026-2027 school year. Early education plays a critical role in shaping students' academic foundations, social development, and long-term success. First grade, in particular, is a pivotal year in which children transition from emergent learners in kindergarten and become more independent readers, writers, and problem solvers. Maintaining small classes during this time is essential to ensuring that each student receives the individualized attention that they need to succeed. Excuse me. Research consistently demonstrates the benefits of smaller class sizes. As an educator myself in the public school system for over a dozen years, I have seen firsthand that smaller class sizes allow teachers to provide more personalized instruction and create a more engaging learning environment. They also make it possible to build stronger relationships with students, supporting both academic and emotional growth. Early identification of learning needs and timely intervention are also more effective in smaller classroom settings. With fewer students, the teachers are able to monitor progress, work in small groups, and address challenges before they become more significant for these young children. Now, I have full confidence in the teachers, the support staff, and the administration here at Jenang and East Greenbush. However, when teachers are responsible for classes of 25 to 26 6-year-olds, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain high levels of engagement and also minimize social disruptions. The addition of one section of first grade at Jenang would keep the class sizes similar to what the current kindergarten class is accustomed to, which is around 18 to 19 students. It will help ensure that these students receive high quality education that they deserve while supporting the teachers in delivering effective instruction. Investing in early education strengthens our entire school community by promoting long-term academic success. Now, I understand that staffing decisions require careful consideration and budgetary and enrollment factors. However, I respectfully urge you to weigh the benefits of smaller class sizes in first grade when making this decision. Thank you for your time and dedication and continued commitment to the students and families of East Greenbush. Thank you.
Moving into board forum.
I'd just like to say I got to see a beautiful middle school musical the other weekend. That was absolutely fantastic. As I was watching it, I kept having to remind myself that they were middle schoolers. I really thought I was watching high schoolers on the stage with how well they performed. And I also really enjoyed the Pops concert last night and another one tomorrow night. So I've just been thrilled with all the musical and drama experiences lately.
I'll wait until after the budget workshop. Thank you.
I got a few comments. I just want to say thank you, Dr. Coates. I really appreciate us getting the PTOs involved early. I was really flat last year, and I want to be careful what I say because I don't want to make your job harder. But I was disheartened last year to hear feedback so late in the budget process, and it was one of the reasons I wanted to get PTOs engaged early. So looking forward, as we make decisions, we consider that up front. And I totally, and I don't mean this as a response, just as a position that early education is very important, and we want to do everything that we can. But I probably would have been 3 to 5 of those 6-year-olds myself, right? So also recognizing the truth is every student isn't the same, right? So sometimes when we say 26, 27, right, it's not always exactly 26, 27, right? So I think it's important that we look very closely, and I think like we spoke about this with the PTOs, talking about the trade-offs, right? I think, it is a hard decision, right? And I think we have to be upfront about, what these choices mean, how that process looked, how we come to final decisions. One thing that encouraged me last year was recognizing that all of our administrators come together, all of the buildings to make a decision. And I think also being intentional around that process and making sure voices are given to just how it's structured, being intentional, and then bringing it back to the public, I think are important steps. With that said, I also want to communicate around Medicaid, the Medicaid question that I said internally, but just say it publicly. I am interested in hearing about how do we classify medical services within the district, in discussions around direct claiming, indirect claiming. Is there this is jar, but effectively what I'm saying is claiming for the service itself that the district provides, and indirect claiming services that can be spread across staff who contribute towards those services, but not directly. If there's any opportunity to shift funding towards federal resources
that we don't currently access. So we have the idea funds, the rest of the money come from state and taxes. If we could have more federal funds in the district, that would be invaluable. Okay. And I want to also thank Ms. Smith for bringing that back to the conversation. It was something we pushed before, maybe not hard enough. I think this will be a great budget year to look at that. I also wanted to just mention, not for today, but just thinking about in the future, I love that we got our PTOs involved. The only piece, and if we continue that practice, the piece I'm thinking about is people less hurt, or people transportation insecure, right? People working multiple jobs. Like, how do we have input from those families? Like, I am concerned looking forward. Do we have everyone at the table? I don't want to see our decisions leaning one way, but to be fully considered for everyone. But I don't think that's a today conversation. I want to raise that. And for now, I think I'll just leave that.
Just wanted to say, I had the opportunity to go to the art show at the Art Center, which I had never been to, so that was a great opportunity, but wonderful talent. We've seen a lot of great talent. We talked about the musicals and also the sports team, so it's been wonderful to engage with the students where they're at. So I appreciate everyone's hard work in this.
Quickly, I'd just like to note that this past Friday, I was a part of Advocacy Day, where students, teachers, and administrators went to the Capitol and the Legislative Office Building in Albany, where we all met with legislators and we shared our ideas and experiences about school funding and our opinions and perspectives that legislators might not always understand. So I'd like to thank Dr. Coase for that experience. It was definitely fun, interesting, and I learned a lot. Thank you.
Well, since we're on the topic of the arts, thank you for the mention of the musical, both musicals. Thank you very much to everyone that was in attendance and supported. So we wrapped that up with a successful little watch party, and everyone really had a great time this year. So thank you for being there and supporting. I also want to mention the regional art show opened last Friday as well. So congratulations to all the students who were accepted into that this year. I think we had like kind of a record high number of students who have art pieces there. So that's all.
Yeah, I too wanted to speak to the art shows. Since our last meeting, I went to not one, not two, but 3 art exhibitions featuring our K through 12 East Greenbush Central School District students. And like athletic competitions at the regional or sectional level, or NISMA competitions for music or concerts, these were 3 capstone presentations showcasing our district students at a regional and statewide level. The first exhibition I saw was the 17th annual K-8 Empire State Plaza Art Collection exhibition, an annual collaboration between the Governor Nelson A. Rockefeller Empire State Plaza Art Collection, the Capital Art Area Supervisors, and the New York State Art Teachers Association. We were one of 18 schools or districts participating. It was great visibility for our district. I was proud to see our students work on view in the state capitol concourse. Lawmakers, families, state workers, student groups, tourists, everybody can see it. Our East Greenbush faculty whose classes were represented included Ms. Diane Shalavutis, Ms. Katie Neznikowski, Ms. Carly Powers, Ms. Kate Wargula. The exhibition was on view March 2nd through the 22nd through National Youth Art Month. The second exhibition I got to see was the one previously mentioned, the 27th annual high school regional juried exhibition held at Albany Center Gallery, a long venerated gallery in our region and respected also for their ongoing community outreach. That exhibition was put together by the gallery, regional art teachers, the New York State Art Teachers Association, again, Region 6, and the Capital Area Art Supervisors again. That exhibition had 126 works of art made by 109 students from 27 schools in the Capital Region. It was a highly competitive exhibition. The work was selected by a panel of 3 jurors who are art professionals. And I'm so proud that nine of our Columbia High School students had work accepted in it. And one of our students also received the McGreevy Pro Lab and Pro Press Award for her photography. Again, great to see a robust showing of our district right there in Albany, the heart of the state's capital. And thanks to the Columbia High School faculty, Ms. Valerie Caffarelli, Ms. Andrea Neiman, who's also the department chair, Ms. Allison Savoca. That exhibition's on here through April 24th. And lastly, I last night saw the Questar 337th Annual Art Exhibition open to all high school students in the Questar 3 districts. Each district can submit up to 3 pieces, and again, our district had a robust showing with 3 Columbia High School pieces. And one student was awarded a 3rd place prize for the drawing he exhibited. There was a wonderful reception last night. Proud parents, students, Columbia teachers, district administration, that you, Mrs. Bahar. And thanks again to our Columbia High School art faculty for their hard work. Though when I thanked them last night, they were very quick to say it all rests on the art foundations laid by their elementary and middle school colleagues. So they're very, very quick to pass the credit along. That exhibition's on through April 17th. So thank you again to all the students and faculty. We're all really proud to see our district represented in these highly visible and in some cases very highly competitive exhibitions.
I just want to give recognition to the leadership of the district and also the leadership at Green Meadow. About a week ago, the district had to up and move a UPK class, and it was short-lived, but I really want to just recognize that it took a lot to just welcome these little kids into a building and kind of disrupt their school year. They really enjoyed it, and I think they're really excited about kind of future time at Green Meadow or wherever they'll go to elementary school. So thanks, Dan Garib and to the district for just being really solution oriented.
Moving on to reports and presentations. First up is the 2026 proposal.
Good evening, everyone. As we progress along in the budget development process, we're starting to hit some key milestones in terms of legislature governor. We're starting to get a little bit more granular in our development process based on what information we have. It's time tonight to give the next update to the board on where exactly we stand. I'm coming with a viable budget presentation to present to the community in May for a public vote. So with that being said, we'll jump into the topics that we want to discuss tonight. First, we want to just give an overview of the comparisons of the one House legislative proposal versus the governor's proposal, give a brief snapshot of where we stand with that information in terms of internally, the budget development process. Mrs. Mahar is going to help us with a overview of class sizes projected, where we stand today. We need to, again, articulate that's a very fluid process right up until including when the school year starts in September of the new year. We need to talk about our bus purchase proposal that will be a part of the referendum for the budget vote in May. Next steps in terms of where we go with the development process, and then finally the important dates that are milestones for us in the budget development process. So the first thing that we have prepared for you tonight is an overview of a comparison of the governor's proposal versus the one House legislative proposal, including both the state Senate and the state assembly. And we tried to pick the key topics that we've been talking about all the way through. So I'm not going to read verbatim, but I'm going to try to highlight some of these issues line by line. So first being foundation aid. As was previously mentioned, the governor has made a commitment to fully funding the foundation aid formula as it stands. Please just keep in mind, as you may or may not know, the governor also commissioned a Rockefeller Institute study about 2 years ago, and there was a long list of recommendations that came out of that Rockefeller study in terms of proposed changes to the foundation aid formula for public schools. Very few of those recommendations actually have been implemented and accepted by both houses of the legislature and the governor. There is nothing new that is being discussed this year from either side in terms of foundation aid. In the Senate one House bill, there was a proposal for a minimum increase of all schools throughout New York State for a minimum of 2%, with some changes in the weighting of how English language learners play into the foundation aid formula, including those who may be homeless and or foster students. Same thing was reflected in the Assembly bill with the minimum 2% increase as well. Right now, the governor's proposal only carries a minimum of a 1% increase for those schools that are off the foundation aid formula. And just as a reminder, what that means is essentially if you are a district that is either stable or declining in enrollment, you are now off the formula and potentially as the formula is built, could potentially be subject to declining aid in your foundation aid funds. Moving on to universal pre-kindergarten, it seems somewhat universal across all three proposals to move to the $10,000 a year allowance for each student that is enrolled in a UPK program in every district. There is some deviation amongst age bracket, and one of the biggest differences is in the Senate One House proposal is the allowance for transportation aid for those students to be transferred to and from program. Right now, there is no provision with the state budget to be able to do that. That is something that has come up in conversation that the governor has proposed that by 28-29, essentially UPK becomes a mandated service. The districts have basically said if this is going to be a mandated service, that we need to be able to provide that transportation for them to access that service.
So can I ask a quick question on the wording? It says full day seats. Is what the timing we're currently offering, is that full day?
We are a full day.
Okay.
So when aid started for UPK or when the increases started, you still have the option to go to a half day.
Okay.
The mandate, if you will, and I don't want to call it a mandate, the shift, if you will, is for every program to be a full.
So our current program aligns with that.
That is correct. Yeah. Moving on to zero emission vehicles. This was one area that I will admit we were a little bit disappointed that we didn't see some more movement on. If you've been watching the news closely, the governor has indicated relief for some of the aggressive climate law bills. It does not appear that it is going to be addressed. Sorry. It does not appear that it is going to be addressed in this budget cycle. In fact, the governor has stood behind in her proposal that the transition must continue. And in both the Senate, One House, and the Assembly, they address some infrastructure funding allowances to allow for some districts that are feeling so inclined to move forward with construction, to move forward with infrastructure upgrades. I think one of the most notable pieces that needs to happen in the background of this is more interaction and discussion with energy providers. I've had an opportunity to sit down with representatives from multiple utility providers, and the repeated concern that we are hearing is the necessary amount of energy that is going to need to be generated for these vehicles. They're not yet prepared to meet that demand, nor do they see it coming anytime soon.
Quick question. Because when I read this, like what I hear is that because the mandate is like years into the future, right? So and when I hear $100 million infrastructure, what I hear is, right, if we put some money towards the infrastructure concern, which is wide bearing, right, it's kind of a wait and see. Why do we need to change that criteria now? Is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the mandate is now actually,
Okay.
because the way the law is written, just to back up to address that question,
Yeah.
thank you. Starting in 2027,
Yeah.
all vehicle purchases are supposed to be electric. So if you buy any buses starting in 2027,
Yeah.
they're supposed to be electric.
Okay.
However, the legislature had approved a waiver process for two-year periods. So beginning for 27-28, we will be able to apply for a waiver showing that we've made some due diligence towards implementation. We've put a referendum before the community. The community has given us voter approval to buy 2 electric buses. We can show that due diligence. We would very likely be approved for that first waiver. So the mandate is here and it's here now.
2027. Yeah.
It's supposed to be. So if we push that out another 2 years, then the critical question will be, where does the mandate stand? Because this is a mandate. If we can't meet it, would we be eligible for another 2-year extension at that point, unless the law changes? We also need to think critically about capital. We are only 20 or 30% of the way through a major capital improvement project in the district now. If we complete a feasibility study that says, let's say the feasibility says your facility is completely unsuited to be able to meet handling EV buses, we would have to go out before the community with another referendum, either to demolish and rebuild or completely re-renovate our facility. That takes years. You know, we would have had to start yesterday, if you will, to get that to where it needs to be.
Question, so looking at 2027 and potential bus purchases, like what I'm saying is, what are we gonna do at that point in time?
So our intent when we get to that point is fully to recommend to the board that we apply for the waiver to get that 2-year extension so we can go through the feasibility study and get more time to try to gear up to see how we can meet this if it stays in that.
And that sounds like a process to me.
It's very much a process.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll be in limbo for a period of time as well.
Well, we're going to continue to take incremental steps forward, but we were hopeful that from the legislative side, we were going to see more movement on this, but it seems very apparent that we're going to have to continue to do some work.
And that relates to your experience, if a district doesn't comply with a state issued mandate, what are the consequences?
So this is of great concern that Mrs. Morgan and I have been discussing. So the reality of this is I've never seen that before, especially when there's state aid tied to it. The one thing that we need to remember, our average bus purchase right now is anywhere on a 66 passenger bus from $170,000 to $180,000. These vehicle purchases are running at $500,000 per bus right now. State has made some changes to the recommended amortization period. They're now starting to talk about infrastructure a little bit. The reality is, looking at the law itself, they could withhold aid. If we don't meet that mandate, they could withhold aid. I would certainly hope that that wouldn't happen because I just simply don't think that this is an attainable goal statewide. I sat at a Questar meeting this year where a district just to the south of us, I think it bought 12 to 15 of these vehicles, and with the extreme winter that we had, they couldn't run those vehicles. They went about 3 months with the vehicles being essentially inoperable. It's a great aspirational goal. I think the technology needs a lot of work. I think there's other things that, from an industry standpoint, biofuels, other clean energies, I'm hoping that the state will look a little bit more critically at what the mandate is, get to the same goal, but not say it all has to be EV. But in short, to answer your question, they could withhold aid if we can't meet the mandate.
At the very least, they would withhold aid on school buses, right? If you buy gas.
That's correct. Yeah. The next line item there, capital outlays. Right now, for any type of capital work that you do in your district, typically, so for instance, our capital improvement project now, right now, our borrowing is 15 years or 20 years. So 15 years, when you amortize your borrowing over 15 years, you usually lay out the financing of your project so that your state aid backs that up. So any debt that you have going out, you can offset that with state aid. Capital outlay project allows you to do smaller chunks of work over time and get that aid back in a single year. So right now, the threshold for a capital outlay project is only $100,000. I hate to say it, but in the public space, it's very hard to really get anything done for $100,000. There's been advocacy for a long period of time to raise that capital outlay amount to $250,000. There was some movement, as you see on this, amongst all houses. It has been up many, many years in a row. I don't know if this is going to be the year that they say yes, but we will wait to see. We do have a small line as a proposal in our budget for the board to consider as well for capital outlay, and we'll have to watch that very closely. State aid payments, the governor has a proposal to freeze state aid payments and cap aid payments to all municipalities. That was rejected by both the Senate and the Assembly. That, in large part, deals with things like use-based aids, our BOCES aid, our transportation aid, all the different things that basically, if we don't use it, we could lose. And again, that has been something that's come up in the past. The governor has taken a look at as well. School meals, there is an incentive for school districts to use New York State meals. and Mrs. Wise, our food service director on advocacy day, actually made this very clear to me. The piece that I did not understand is there's an aggregate total that they have to pull apart between breakfast and lunch to be able to get this 30% incentive aid, if you will. This is what this is addressing. How can we decouple that to make it a little bit easier for districts to buy New York State food and take advantage of the aid that's there? My understanding from Mrs. Wise is it's been there for many years, and because of the bureaucratic nature of having to disaggregate all this data, a large number of districts in New York State don't access it because it's just so hard to deal with it. So again, that is. Yes, sir.
So currently, we can only receive the incentive aid for lunches. Is that
Correct.
Okay,
Correct. So the goal is to have it be breakfast and lunch, but to be able to parse that data apart. Yeah. So that's a three-tier overview of what we saw from the New York State Legislature, the One House budget proposals versus the executive proposal, which brings us to now the conversation of where do we stand. So again, during our last conversation, we talked about our budget proposal on March 11th, essentially being almost the format of a rollover budget, and those expenditures mirroring about $120.9 million. If you look to the left side of how we begin to balance that budget issue between our expenditures and our anticipated revenue, one way in which every municipal organization around the state essentially works to balance their budget is through the appropriation of fund balance. That unrestricted fund balance can be used to appropriate in the subsequent year's budget up to a certain percentage, and it is normal for that to happen. The one thing that we have to be in mind of from 24-25 to 25-26, the amount that the district increased the appropriation of our fund balance and our reserves went up dramatically. We also need to keep in mind that when you appropriate fund balance to balance your subsequent year budget, you're automatically by default saying, I'm going to underspend my budget by that much in the previous year to be able to balance the next year's budget. Okay? It's very important to remember. That increase is something that we need to watch very, very, very closely, because depending on the algorithm, if you will, of what we choose to take out of reserves versus what we choose to appropriate from fund balance, reserves, as we know, depreciate over time. You pull from your savings account, if you're not putting money back in, you're going to eventually run out. So we need to watch that very closely, and that increase from last year is something that should stay on the forefront of our radar very regularly. So what we did to begin the process of coming to a balanced budget was make the assumption that we were going to appropriate the same amount of fund balance and reserves for the 26-27 fiscal year. Again, we don't know how much we want to pull out of reserves. We don't know how much we want to pull from fund balance just yet. We want a little bit more time to make that recommendation to the board on what that should look like. Regardless, with the assumption that we're going to appropriate $7.7 million in fund balance and reserves, that still leaves us with the assumption, as per our conversation at our last meeting, that we would have a $2 million deficit that we had to close. So what we have begun, especially with the board's direction, is looking at ways that were primarily non-staff related to be able to reduce our expenditures for the 26-27 school year. Tentatively, we have identified about $1.1 million in savings, and we're still verifying some of those things. Because when we start to pull some of those increases out, we need to go back to the directors, we need to go back to the administrators and make sure that if we don't budget for those increases, what is the impact for the subsequent year? We want to make sure before we bring those itemized lists forward to the board that we've done our due diligence. We have been able to identify just over $1.1 million that we feel pretty confident that we can reduce. That means we've got still approximately about $900,000 that we have to identify to reduce in next year's budget. That closes our gap. It gets us part of the way there. It certainly highlights the issue that we have to look at our expenditures. We have to look at why the expenditures are rising. Mrs. Mulligan helped me with the presentation that we did for the PTO the other night, and it was the first time I can tell you in 10 years as a superintendent that I can affirm that now benefit costs are outpacing the increases of salary costs. Next year's anticipated increases, the health insurance benefits and the benefit costs account for 40% of the increase that we're slated to see for next year. That is something that we've talked about, that we are working to identify. Mrs. Mulligan is potentially going to hold a seat on the cash executive board for next year, that we can live on the inside of trying to mitigate some of those costs. But it is the first time that we are really seeing those benefit costs far outpace anything that we're seeing in terms of salary increases. So again, we still have a little bit of ways to go here. We're a good part of the way there. We're doing everything possible to try to avoid health costs. I have to be transparent. I don't know that we're going to be able to completely close this gap without having to address some of this with personnel. I can't affirmatively or definitively tell you that for certain. I've been spending a lot of hours literally going line by line, asking questions, asking Mrs. Mulligan to tell me what's in this expenditure. We are being as scrutinous as we possibly can. We just need a little bit more time to get those recommendations in front of the.
And at maybe next meeting, will we get an updated expenditure report where you made those decisions?
Yep.
Okay.
100%, and that's going to be one of the last slides. And I just wanted to address one of the other questions that you brought up last time as well. So the discretionary versus mandated funding, it's going to be very hard for us to delineate that for you. I think we're better giving you the itemized budget, because how do we define discretionary? Some may say that supplies for buildings and grounds, for paint, for rock salt, whatever the case may be, could be considered discretionary. And I'll be as even more specific, AIS at the K through 2 level is not a mandated service. However, we've had AIS providers, meaning personnel, in that position. So I can give you a high level of some of those expenditures, but to drill down mandated versus discretionary would be very complicated to be able to do that. I think it's more merited. Let's go through the line item expenditures so you can get that understanding that you're looking for.
UPK, I'm sorry, and I may be getting into the weeds on this, but if UPK goes up to 10,000, I know we don't get the full 10,000, but if we find that out sooner rather than later, does that take away any of the?
Yes, so in some, I know I don't have the itemizations ready for you, but just foreshadowing some of that, we are anticipating that it will go up, and some of the expenditure reductions that we do spend in UPK.
Okay.
So you will see that in the release that we have for you for reductions.
Thank you, Dr. Coles.
So that's been considered.
Oh, it's already in there?
Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Coles, I'm wondering, like, for discretionary versus non-discretionary, is it possible, like, to get some sort of a matrix just saying, like, your view of how you would classify, like very broad level categorization, like by like class or account? I don't know, like how, I don't know, but I'm just,
I think it would be challenging to
Okay.
do that.
okay, all right.
The answer to that's yes. I could give you my opinion, but
Yeah.
I'd really have to sit with Mrs. Mulligan, because she's lived with this budget for a little bit longer than I have.
Yeah.
I think that's really good, healthy conversation to have. It's just very difficult to itemize that with one standard set of expectations.
Yeah.
So for instance, I would not say, again, and I hope that people don't read this the wrong way, I would not say that AIS services in the K through 2 level are discretionary.
Yeah.
I've seen districts get in dire fiscal situations where they had to make that reduction.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Mahar has spent a lot of time doing some data mining on what our projected class sizes could be for next year. So I'm going to let her take the lead on that for the time being, and I'll help support her with any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. So this slide here reflects our K-5 average class size by grade. These numbers, and if you look at the third right column, are reflective based on our rollover enrollment and divided by the number of sections that we currently have, with no increases and no reductions. So current rollover sections This is the projected class size that we have. And I just wanted to point out that the 21.1 class size for kindergarten is reflective of the number of kindergarten registration packets we sent out. So those are not our current registered students, but the number that we're projecting. So I also just want to point out that as I go through all of this, these are initial snapshots. And as Dr. Coates has been saying, very fluid, right? This can change on the day. It can change within the, I've been in at my office and we have people coming in and out all day long. So these numbers really are quite fluid. We also wanted to keep on there for K-5 a 7-year projection. You notice that some years have been lower, and specifically, we all know that going through COVID, there was an increased amount of funding and we were able to have class sizes lower. The other thing that I want to point out on each slide as I go through the levels, you're going to notice where it says student class size guidelines. Those are negotiated class sizes that are contracted through our union.
Can I ask?
Just a quick question. This is very in the weeds, but the actual 2021 for fourth grade and then the actual 2022 for fifth grade. That seems like a very bizarre spike there. I wonder,
19.2 and then up to 19.7.
no, because that fourth grade then became the fifth grade class, right? Oh, so
Yeah,
23.5, that's a really big spike. Is that a thing? Do we need to just look into this?
We can, I'll triple check it.
Okay.
Yeah, but it can happen. You'd be surprised. We have, just think about in general in the community of East Greenbush, and think about just increasing, developments and housing and, it really, our general East Greenbush, the community itself has grown. People want to come here. And it's actually something I think we should celebrate. I do know, and hearing people talk about class sizes, we are very mindful of that. And me and my role, I am very mindful of that. And we will be considering that. And as we continue, to monitor, we are monitoring every grade level and making sure that, we're looking at that closely. And as we develop the budget, we will make sure. We haven't made any decisions at this time because it's really quite early. We could be making decisions in August, to be honest, when it comes to sections.
So that's sections and how many teachers per grade, right?
At the elementary
Yeah.
level, because that's how it's different for the middle and the high school level.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is because thinking about like school specific concerns, like in averages across, and what I'm wondering is also thinking about how the board interacts with our district superintendent in regards to decisions of class sizes. Like what I'm wondering is, irregardless, like the board says, right, we want to prioritize a specific class or like how does that relationship look for giving a recommendation, board response, working together to create a direction?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. So it starts at the building level. So the building principals regularly communicate with me. We had a virtual meeting earlier this week on what they are saying in terms of enrollment, what their thoughts are in terms of early class size. They typically handle their section at the building level with full information to us at district level. So if there's a particular grade level where they're concerned, if they see something in terms of special education, we are fully in the loop and informed on exactly what they're doing. We then try to get that information out to all of you so you know exactly what's being communicated from the building level. There may be times where a deep dialogue goes on where I may say to principal 1 or principal 2, are you sure? Let's make sure that we've had a good conversation on it. So it is very much a two-way street, but it initiates at the building level. Also, the PPS director sometimes will be part of that conversation to make sure that our required and mandated classes, those sizes are being addressed and met. So it's a very, very comprehensive process, but it starts at the building and department level. Getting to the last part of the question, if we were going to have an initiative from the board level to say, we want to address elementary class size, because that's where we are, we should generally start that process a little bit earlier, but if that was a directive of the board, we could even, before we get into the hiring part of the year, start to look at how do we address the available vacancies that we have? Can we shift any of those new hires to address class size at any level? And we look at our sixth grade level to see if there's an opportunity to address having someone go down to teach in one of the K-5 buildings. We can look at all of those options, but ensure it the earlier the better.
Another question, because, I mean, I'm certain you would say, like, because I definitely would agree that typically, right, we want changes coming from building level, right? The professionals that are most familiar, right, with what's going on at the ground floor. But just thinking just forward, right, about the board being responsive to the community, I think it's important to have a full view of how everything looks together, right? And just saying that, you know, the board can respond, but you have to temper carefully. And the truth is, we trust our administrators and building level professionals to make decisions that are best, right?
And to, yes, to answer that question, yes. And to, in the context of the greater conversation on what are the available resources?
Yes, yes.
Because at the same time, we need to be responsible to our community. We don't have infinite resources.
Sure.
And those priorities need to be direct priorities, but they need to be reasonable priorities at the same time. And we need to know where do we want to direct our resources.
So I also just want to point out, I know Jesse brought up, and Dr. Coates, that we do have them working very closely with the building principals. So they are aware of the current, of this quick snapshot for tonight. Okay. So for Gulf Middle School, same thing, right? We take the enrollment that we have, projected enrollment as we roll over, and we divide that by the number of sections with no reductions and no increases at this time. So we've kept everything consistent, and this is our projected numbers. In case you weren't sure what a core meant, I wanted to just quickly explain math. It's your English, it's your science, it's your social studies. So we took the number of sections there. And then the encores are things like career readiness, it's our health classes, it's the technology class, it's our consumer home and career spots. That's our encores. And we currently have 3 world languages, German, French, and Spanish, Spanish being our most popular one. And so you'll see that those are the current average sizes.
And I think this was the same during last year's budget process. We've got great historical numbers for elementary, but it's less of the Goff in Columbia.
I can actually provide that. I have that actually information that I can get.
I feel like we have the same thing. Yeah, that would be helpful.
You can follow up, Jay, if you get it to me in the weekly update.
Okay, then. High school. So high school, and as you know, with Goff, everything it's projected, it's anticipated. The middle school currently, like, they don't ask the students yet, like, what course you want to take. They haven't done any scheduling yet, where it's different at the high school. Right now, they do have some anticipated numbers in terms of enrollment for the different core areas, and then actually other areas as well are. So we do have some anticipated projected enrollment numbers. Again, we were able to take the current number of sections, divide that number, and that's how we were able to provide a projected number for you for each math, science, ELA, social studies. For those areas, I just want to point out for everyone, you might say, why is social studies and why is ELA so much, not so much, but 2 and 3 students can seem higher. For those particular classes, courses, we have a 4-year graduation requirement for 4 years, where for math and science, there's only a 3-year requirement. So you'll tend to see, of course, the enrollment numbers higher. For world languages, it's only 2 years. So you'll see, even though, which is actually promising to know that we want bilingual students. And then I've added in, last year we didn't have CTE, but I wanted to add it in here, our career and technical education. I wanted to add that in because I'm sure maybe some of you have heard that New York State had just officially approved the personal finance education. We've already been talking about this for many months now. We didn't wait until approval. It's for next year. We've already been talking about it at the middle school and the high school level, and we have an anticipated plan of putting that particular instructional requirement, not graduation requirement, I want to emphasize that, in our CTE classes in more than one, and our teachers are confident that they can put it into those classes. So So we will, I project to see, continued enrollment, again, fluid numbers, that will probably change and be a little higher. Just wanted to add in 1 year of art and then at physical education. You're gonna notice again, that number up there, and there's a star next to it. With our physical education, there is no contractual number. Now, does that mean we want to have 75 in the class? Of course not, but I just wanted to point that out.
How come there's no music?
Oh, it's just. Yes, that actually, we talked about music. So music is also one of, and I want you to know something. I did actually say that. We talked about why no music. Why no music, yeah. So music is a tricky one because let's just take some of the classes, right? You've got lessons, you've got band. In those two alone, in lessons, you could have 5 students, and in a course, you could have 50. To give 90, okay?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it's hard to do that 9-12 because we take our resources, our human resources, and we use them across the K-12 spectrum. So for me to say 9-12, here's how we're utilizing our teachers in 9-12, it just wouldn't be fair to take a class.
I was thinking, I didn't know there, forgive me for being ignorant, but I didn't know if there was musical theory or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think about band or chorus, I was wondering if there was music class, that's fine.
There is general music in the middle school.
Middle school, I knew that, yeah.
And then at the elementary, we have music
that
as
part,
well,
yeah.
but they also teach lessons down there and so there's a lot of
Okay.
factors that play into this. So it was really, I felt like to put a number on there almost would have been it just wouldn't have been true. It would have been very true. Yeah.
I'm actually in music theory, and there's only 10 kids in our class. So it would have been like totally
Yeah,
opposite.
if we saw 30 in there, you'd be like,
Yeah.
wow, but I 10, and then you said 90.
Right.
So I will commit for next time, I'll at least make a note of
You
this.
don't have to, I was just curious, it was more curiosity.
Yeah, thank you for pointing it out. The last thing I wanted to say before I finish up on the high school, I just wanted to point out to everyone that, we've been talking a lot about fluidity, right? That these are just snapshots. And depending on the level, whether it is, we have families, like I said, moving in and moving out daily. And we have students that go out for medical reasons. We have students, depending on the level, that will enroll or withdraw from a class. So numbers are changing constantly. So it's really challenging to give you a solid actual until where we actually change the actual. Mr. Kilmartin and he's been working with me very closely today to make sure that we have some accurate numbers for the actual and the average. So I just wanted to point that out to people and know that we are closely monitoring this, and then as we make decisions, we will.
The other piece too, and if you mentioned it, forgive me for repeating it, the 9th grade class this year.
Yes, so the 9th grade, yes, I actually have numbers. Tell me if I'm making sure I get the numbers for 9th grade. So our 9th grade, incoming 9th grade class is much larger.
The current 9th grade.
Thank you. The current 9th grade is 374.
Which is significantly larger than some of our other cohorts that in terms of the general core classes will drive up that class size. It's a very large cohort. That obviously will be in the high school.
We're on average right now running around 300, a little high, 311, 307 is 38, 308. So 374.
Right. So the next part of what we needed to discuss tonight was the annual referendum that usually appears as part of the budget process for vehicle purchases. To give an overview of where our fleet currently stands, we have about 102 buses in our inventory right now. The average lifespan of our vehicles runs about 12 years, and the usual replacement plan is around 8 years. Right now, and historically, as far back as we could see in the budget process, bus purchases have been funded through a bus reserve. The one proposition that we are going to be asking the board to consider moving into the final stages of this budget proposal is for the purchase of 6 full-size 66 passenger diesel buses. Now, the first question that you may ask is, it looks like our replacement plan is 8 years, but we're a little bit behind in terms of only purchasing 6 buses. This is for a variety of different reasons. Number one, the fleet is aging a little faster than we had anticipated. Number two, the vehicles themselves are getting a little bit more expensive. And we need to talk about the implications of buying EVs, because as we had talked about as well, the EVs are exponentially more expensive than the regular buses. We also thought it was important at this time to just give an update on where we stand with the voter-approved vehicle purchases from 2025. So for our fuel buses, the 66 passenger buses that we had ordered just arrived. We have them on the lot. Are they on the road yet, Mr. Lips?
They will be next week.
They'll be on the road next week, so they were delivered. We also had authorization to purchase 2 28-passenger vehicles and 2 21-passenger wheelchair accessible buses. So one of the challenges that we had with the manufacturer that we were working with in regards to letter B there, the 28-passenger vehicles, the manufacturer, when they were trying to clear through DOT, had a weight issue. So according to DOT specifications, the vehicles were not safe to be on the road. In essence, they were worried about the buses losing control based on the distribution of the weight in the vehicle. When this came up, the manufacturer only offered to the district that they would give a small financial credit, but their solution was to take some of the seats off the bus to limit the capacity of the bus to lower the weight on the bus. For a variety of different reasons, we were not happy about that solution, number one. But number two, that's not what we had for voter authorization from the community. So we did cancel that order. Mr. Lips was new. He was able to do his analysis of the fleet. He looked at the mileage. He looked at the age. He felt strongly that we didn't need those vehicles. The other 2 21-passenger wheelchair accessible buses were definitive. And because of those struggles that we were having with that manufacturer, was why we discussed with the board the potential of moving to the new manufacturer. We have or will shortly have one of the wheelchair accessible buses. Monday, and the other one is in production right now. So those we will still continue to move forward with, and we'll actually very much need those buses, because the one wheelchair bus that we have is reaching or at the end of its useful life, and we need to know that we can transport those students who need that to and from school. The last piece in terms of purchases that we wanted to discuss for a moment was the 2 66-passenger EV buses. So as you know, we do have voter authorization to purchase those 2 vehicles. We did have our district architect, Rebel, come in and do an initial study of our facility. They have identified an infrastructure need and upgrade for work totaling about $100,000 for us to be able to get enough power to and source the chargers to be able to buy those vehicles. Obviously, we need to address where is that money going to come from, number one, but also we wanted to look at that in the greater context of working with any of the incentives that may be out there to complete our feasibility study, and closely monitor if we're able to get the waiver for an additional 2 years. Can we pause on this and look at this in the larger context of what may be still to come?
Dr. Combs, quick question. Thinking about capital outlay, do we have a plan for capital outlay already?
We do. We have several plans, and we can include that as an option potentially, because you have to look at the transportation aid carefully. So we will make sure we bring all of that forward to you in the next budget presentation. But yes, we do have numerous items. To little foreshadowing, we went back to our building condition survey.
Yeah.
Those items that were not addressed in the capital project, we tried to pick off those ones that could potentially be a good fit.
The only reason why I asked, because I know we spoke about how challenging it is to find a $100,000 project, and staring them in the face is a $100,000 project.
Completely understand.
Yeah.
Two questions. So with the zero emission buses and a project, as I think you said this before, the 100K infrastructure project, that's just for 2 buses, right? That wouldn't help our future capacity.
Correct.
And then the 2 28-passenger buses that were canceled, where do those funds go? Is that just putting that on
Stay,
hold? or-
stays in the bus reserve.
Okay, and can I go toward the 6?
Yeah, and that's gonna come up in the
My
subsequent
apologies.
ones. That's okay. Good questions, thank you.
And just as far as like, we actually like had two different votes right on the buses last year. So if those were voted on, we can we're being voted, we're given permission, not necessarily that we have to execute.
Correct. So what we would essentially have to do, if we get to the point where A, the mandate changes, or B, the district simply says, we're just not gonna buy these, it's not feasible to buy them, we'd have to be transparent with the community that we're rejecting that portion of the approval. Until that time, that money just sits in the bus reserve. Where it's already been allocated. Okay. Just give a glimpse of some of where the fleet stands right now with the vehicles that we have just purchased, talking about some trade-ins. As you can see, the age of the vehicles, many of our buses are more than 10 years old. The mileage is going up quickly. Were these all diesel, Mr. Lips, or were some of them diesel and gas?
They're diesel.
These are all diesel buses. In many instances, what happens is the body of the bus goes before the engine does, and DOT will render them not safe for the road. So, thinking about the question that Dr. Shane brought up in terms of how do we pay for our buses. So if we think about the concept of the way that we have been purchasing our buses, having a bus reserve, it's been somewhat of a healthy cycle for us to not have to borrow for our vehicles. We do have a reserve balance, which was initially started by funds that the district had available to be able to put into this bus reserve. You would have to minus out any potential vehicle purchases you made in that year. We would get about 66.5% transportation aid on those vehicles that we would purchase. Then any additional fund balance that the board would choose to appropriate had us in a healthy cycle, making sure that we didn't have to borrow for those vehicles. So now keeping that in mind, just looking down into the future a little bit, if you will. We started the year with a balance in the bus reserve of about roughly $2.4 million. That was inclusive of, if you remember, when we closed out the books for the 24-25 school year, the board had approved leaving $800,000 available for that purpose. We allocated about $893,000 for this year. Pardon me, I skipped over the revenue. The revenue would be the state aid, the bus aid that we drew from purchases for the previous year, plus any interest that we accrued on those reserves. We did leave a line item. So typically you would see purchases for any particular year on one line, but because we're not intending to buy the EVs this year, but still have to account for it, that's why we broke it out. So if you account for that being the minuses, if you will, for the 25-26 school year, that leaves us about $1.4 million still in the bus reserve. You can see what the accounting looks like for the authorization that we're asking for the new year. The one thing we need to keep in mind is we're watching our available fund balance go towards balancing the subsequent year's budget. If we find ourselves in a position where we're not able to take any additional funding from end of year fund balance to put towards the bus reserve, we are estimating that somewhere in the 28-29 timeframe, it is very likely that we're going to have to talk about starting to finance our vehicles. So we're going to have to watch that very closely. It would be a shift of the practice of the district. There's different things that you have to do with the referendum when that happens, about public notices, about how we borrow. But we just need to keep that in mind that we are trending where that is a concern right now of not being able to pull the money from fund balance to continue to fund the bus reserve.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is whether or not you're eligible for the EV bus waiver, does that hang in the balance of like how much money in your bus reserve? Because I didn't even know that the bus reserve is a thing, which is the dumb thing to say, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't understand how everyone is eligible for the waiver. It's just like,
So great question. At first glance of what we've seen on the bus reserve, essentially what they're saying is, have you made any kind of progress towards implementing the EV? So we affirmatively can say yes. to put a referendum for the community said yes. Simply by doing that, it gives us a little bit more time. I'm assuming that there's gonna be districts out there that are gonna say no.
Yeah.
They haven't done anything, they were hoping it was gonna go away, and that may be a greater challenge for them. From what we've read, we feel like we've made some progress and we're.
I just had a question about that waiver. So we put the referendum forward in the past, but now we're not purchasing those buses and we're not asking for another EV purchase. So will they still see good faith in that one referendum?
So again, I'm gonna say tentatively, yes.
Okay.
Because I can tell you from my previous position, it took us almost 24 months to get the 2 vehicles that we ordered. So I think that there's recognition that in the marketplace, even though this mandate continues to push forward, that there are still some manufacturing, technology, and production issues.
But even if we haven't ordered it.
Correct.
Yeah, we still have
Okay.
earmarked
We,
it.
we have voter authorization to do so.
Right, and we're earmarking it, the 700,000 is
Correct.
technically still had it.
Correct. We haven't spent that money anywhere else. We have permission from the community. And again, I say tentatively with my first glance at the waiver. I think for the first waiver, especially with what we're hearing from the governor as well, that there's some concern about timeline for implementation of the climate law. I think we'll be okay with the first one.
I'm wondering about the ratio of revenue or state aid generated from the EV versus purchases versus diesel. What does that look like?
Want to talk about the amortization?
Yes, so they changed the amortization period and they reduced it, so it's over 8 years versus 12, I believe it was. For the EV bus purchases, they've incentivized, part of, this authorization included having the New York State bus incentive voucher program.
Yes.
Which reduces the cost of the bus, so that $500,000 bus, there may be a couple $100,000 available under that voucher, bringing that cost to the district down to about $300,000. We can count the gross cost of the bus in the aid calculation. So in essence, we're getting aided on that voucher.
Sounds like a high.
So it ends
ratio.
up being, it ends up netting that we're fully aided on it. It's almost
Okay.
half and half.
Versus the diesel, we're not fully aided on the diesel.
The aid ratio is a 66. Yeah.
Okay. So we would be advantaged from a revenue perspective. given-
Over an 8-year period.
Yes, which don't help us in the immediate years, but over the long term, especially thinking about out years where we might have,
So I guess the one, part of question on that,
Yes.
because there could be other operational costs that are
Yes,
associated
for
with
sure.
that.
Yeah,
So
I
just
agree.
when you're purely looking at
Yeah.
the bus purchase and the aid
yes.
alone,
maintenance.
then yes, but if there
Yeah.
are different investments, just even the cost of electricity versus fuel, so there's
Yes.
a lot of studies out there that the operational costs.
The bus garage, we're gonna be doing.
Yeah, I know all the
Multi-million dollar.
I think the only other piece I hope you all to recognize as well. Well, yes, maybe the amortization allows us to catch up on the aid.
Yeah.
We're still appropriating $500,000 per bus versus
Yes.
170.
For sure.
We will have to raise our budget by that much. to get the funds.
Yes, and that's not, I hear what you're saying. Offsets. Interesting. What I'm wondering is though, right, because definitely fuel should be cheaper, right, or an EV. Like I would expect quite a bit cheaper, like, I don't, yeah.
Yeah.
We're hearing the electricity is more costly.
The
than-
delivery costs are very high.
It'll also drive up our cost of electricity in general, not just for the buses, but it'll, we'll be paying more per kilowatt hour because the demand is big.
Okay, okay, interesting.
Just the school or is it the entire community?
I'm not really sure, I think it's a community impact, but definitely at least ours alone.
How do we get a clear picture of, like, I mean,
So
yeah,
one of the things that we had been talking about is.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be looking at post budget seasons.
So just to keep in mind on the feasibility studies, they bring districts that have already gone through these processes.
Yeah.
What they're hearing repeatedly is you need a new facility, you need a new facility. So
can we just snatch up a couple, like, I mean, versus spending the money ourselves, just snatch up a couple feasibility studies and just.
I think it has to be unique to.
Yeah.
I know, it's like, we kind of already know what I'm trying to say, but I mean, and that's also part of that bigger process too, is, you know, as well, so. And there is some funding through NYSERDA. It's still taxpayer dollars at the end of the day, but.
Doesn't come directly up the top.
It doesn't.
Is there a conversation about, didn't we talk about like the importance of doing this regionally?
So I'm so glad you just brought that up. I went about 2 weeks ago with Mr. Lips to a regional transportation meeting. And not only were we talking about the greater efficiencies that we can look at this simply from delivery of service, some neighboring school districts were talking about, are we going to have to go to a model? That could be extremely complicated, but it may be one of the only ways to mitigate. So, I agree. To be honest, everything's going to have to be on the table if this mandate stays intact. That's it. All right, so where does that leave us? So the work still to be done is we still need to finalize the identification of reductions for options to go before the Board of Education. My hope is by the beginning of next week to have that finalized, to at least have it in the hands of the board. We will need just to make a final commitment on whether or not we're going to include a capital outlay project in this budget proposal. Again, just keep in mind there would be a small impact on the tax cap should we choose to remove it. The current proposal that we have had in front of you does have it included. For our budget workshop on the 3rd, we would have a public presentation on the options that you could consider for spending reductions to balance the budget. For the 4th budget workshop on the 21st, we would have to make any final decisions that were still pending, and the board would have to be prepared to meet its obligatory timelines to adopt the budget after all of that is resolved. So just a reminder on a few key important dates. We are at March 25th. We do have another meeting, as we had just talked about, scheduled for the 15th. We do have 3 vacant Board of Education seats that are open. Board petitions will be due just before budget adoption on the 20th. Again, you'll have a little bit more time to deliberate the budget if needed on the 21st, but you will need to adopt the budget before the end of the meeting on the 21st. We'll have our public budget hearing. Again, the budget that the board has adopted and we're preparing for the community. Again, we can take any final comments and questions from the board on that hearing. And then the public election for both the vacant board seats and the budget vote is on May.
Dr. Coase, quick question. So thinking about budget adoption, could you speak to exactly what the board votes on? Is it the tax rate? Is it the expenditures?
It's not the tax rate.
Okay.
It's on the overall expenditures of the budget for that.
Excellent. So regrets.
The tax rates get set after that, after the budgets are finalized, once you start to reach the fiscal year.
Can I just, do you need anything from us tonight?
So if the board is prepared, if we go back to make any decisions on, obviously you can't make any reductions, you don't have those recommendations from us yet. The only thing that would be helpful to know, because again, we're going to reduce revenue if the board obviously take it out, is regarding the capital outlay project.
I support it. I guess I'm only one.
Yeah.
That's very helpful for us to know. Just to
Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
And I should have done this before the meeting. It's because I really didn't look. I thought when we saw the email, I saw that we only were supposed to come early. And I never looked at the stuff until today.
Okay.
So the public hearing, I've always thought this is really odd. We finalize the budget and then we have a public hearing. Do we have the opportunity, and this is not you didn't set this up yourself, but is there opportunity to make changes at that point?
That's a state mandated timeline. And the hearing is more for educational purposes rather than really truly revised.
So it's really the folks coming now is, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's final articulation, what's included, what's not, how did we get there, and what was the roadmap for any questions that haven't been answered.
Okay. And that's part of why we wanted to get the PTOs engaged early, because last year it was after that point that we got all the feedback. So looking forward.
Yes. Just one key benchmark that's not here that I wanted to also just inform the board on. Again, I think we've done is, shouldn't say, we've done a lot of the work internally as a central administrative team. Tomorrow, the afternoon, there is a meeting scheduled with the building principals and directors to just peel off the last layer of this on how we're going to get to that list of proposals. After I've met with them, after I have time to digest and make some final recommendations. Like I said, my goal is to have the quote unquote menu of options in writing to you sometime, hopefully early next week, so you can start to deliberate on that. And then, like I said, at the April 15th meeting, that will be a public presentation. We can start to share that hopefully.
In the April 15th, Jen, last year you did sort of 5-year budget projections. Would that be good?
Perhaps, yes, that's something that, yes, that's actually one of my goals to be working on.
Or just one of them.
Rolling it forward into those next
I think
years.
that was helpful, and I think it's a good way to
Just to see what this budget level will look like based on how we're performing this year into the following year. Just a lot, so I wanted to.
whenever it can be.
Yes.
Very wonderful.
Anything else that we can address?
I'm just wondering, Mrs. Mahar, that, I think I've seen it before, but I'm not sure for this coming year, the breakdown of the classes and the class size and average across the whole district. If we could have a breakdown of that by building so that we know what the average class size is for each grade level at each of the elementary, so that we can consider that.
That was in the last year one at the end, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Moving on to administrative reports.
So I did want to echo a lot of the sentiments we had already shared tonight. I had an opportunity to attend the middle school production as well. And when you bring your 22-year-old and your 22-year-old shares the same sense, how many times we lean over and say, yeah, this is middle school. He was truly impressive. And actually ran into Mrs. Heron. I was able to attend the art gallery walk at the Albany Center on Friday night. Alicia Williams was our award winner from that evening, and her younger cousin that was there was just thrilled to death. She was standing next to her photos, and people were taking celebrity photos of her as well. And to our students that are here, the last couple of weeks has really reminded us why we do the work that we do. And I've seen all of you involved in one activity or another. I know many of you have left already, but for those of you that are still here, thank you for what you do to make it worthwhile for us to go this effort. Our advocacy committee, as Will did say, did have an opportunity to meet with 3 of our elected officials. We met with our Assemblyman, our state senator. A lot of the similar concerns that we have been echoing, we shared with them. And it was a great experience, I thought, to be able to sit on the floor of the assembly. Assemblyman McDonald actually brought us in for a meeting on the floor of the assembly. But as we shared, it was interesting to watch their reactions. So, for instance, Assemblyman McDonald was very interested when Mrs. Wise spoke about the 30% rule. So, as sometimes we think it's a lot of effort to get no headway, I think making sure as one of the largest districts in the region and probably the second largest in the county, it is really a good thing to do to make sure that our voice is always heard and articulate our needs. And I think it was time very well spent. So the board member that was there, our students who really represented our districts at the highest level, Will, Andrew, and Miriam. Miriam shared with Senator Ashby when he asked, "What are your long-term goals?" She articulated very clearly to be president of the United States. So I think he was very taken by that. But I was glad that we were able to do it. I think the elected officials really appreciated the conversation. Thank you, Jeff. We also had a health and safety committee meeting this past week. We reviewed our proposed updates that we were looking at our bus accident policy so that we can continue to move that forward. We get some recommendations from the board. We talked about a new health and safety requirement in terms of a procedure that is going to be necessary regarding toileting and diapering for school districts. As schools are watching very closely that many high need students are staying in districts simply based on the increasing number of needs, the state has now articulated having a written procedure. It's not a policy, it's not a regulation, just to make sure that there's training, that supplies are on hand, that we can go to the families. That at length. We talked about a variety of different safety issues as well, but both of those committees did meet.
Question about advocacy, and would it be helpful to, or is there a way to mobilize our voting community on behalf of these projects? Like, for example, if there's certain things we're advocating for through the committee and in your meetings with lawmakers, we have, like on our website, I'm just brainstorming. For our East Greenbush district residents, call your lawmaker and ask for this, like whether a letter you can send or something, maybe it's assistance with healthcare costs, or maybe it's we like the idea of EV buses, but we need infrastructure help. Like I don't know, so ways to get
100%.
everybody on board with.
And trying to get community volunteers to take part in the committee is absolutely a good thing to do as well. The other piece I think we need to consider also is trying to move some of that work a little bit earlier in the year. We're at the mid to later part of their budget planning process. If we could potentially get to Albany a little bit earlier in the process, I think that will help. We're trying different ways, yes, publicizing on the website, using our parent square or social media to try to pick our high priority points to get people involved. Absolutely a very good thing to do, because when they hear from more people, they're more likely to try to take action.
If you have the bullet points already that you use, you just here's a paragraph, call your lawmaker and say this.
Yeah.
Right, like we could all do it.
And, and to be honest, when we met with our elected officials, we had a handout that we left each one of them with. We didn't reinvent the wheel. There's plenty of advocacy groups out there that already articulate things very well. School Boards Association, ASBO, Superintendents Association. We use primarily a lot of what they've done and just modified it slightly to meet the needs of our district. We can handpick from those things to get out to the community as well.
That's a great idea. I feel like a lot of students would be interested in hearing about things like that too, especially students who take like the advanced government classes. Not to single, not to leave out students who are in the regular government classes, but like that'd be a great thing to talk about in government, like things that you can do yourself. Call your lawmakers, because students don't know that, so I think that's a great idea.
And I think they really enjoyed meeting with the students. More so than the adults.
You always do.
Very good. Thank you.
Well, not so much, thank you, not so much a discussion item, although I'm going to pass out a copy of the calendar for curriculum presentations to the Board of Education for the rest of the year. Dr. Coates and I planned out some curriculum presentations that I'll be bringing forward that are highlighted. Oh, that one. Does anybody have any questions when they take a look at it? Save the dates.
Save
Your
the
favorite one. Okay, thank you. Next up.
That was a mic drop. Okay.
So moving on to discussion items. Curriculum presentations. Is that what that was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
That's okay. I think there was a little, okay, so regular business. Notice of public hearing. Any comments? motion to approve? Kathy, second. Artie, all those in favor? Resolution to approve the EGTA MOA. Any questions or comments on that one?
I just have a question. So these are, looks like six, right, that, shifting the funds to clubs of interest, I guess. So those six clubs that, were they established clubs that don't have any interest anymore? And so students don't participate, or we didn't get, people who wanted to leave those clubs?
So I want to speak to that.
Yes.
Lead that conversation.
Yes, I'll get into the mic, I can address that. So there's trends, and depending on the year and the interest, there might be a situation where there might be staff that aren't available or interested in doing the club. They might see that it's tapered off over the years. One of the things I can give an example is a yearbook club. I think some of that was taken over maybe by the PTO at some point, so then it wasn't run by the club, so there might be money there. So this gave us the opportunity to shift those unused funds to people that are doing unpaid and state clubs, so they can get them for their working service with you.
So are the clubs contractually listed as, like, the Yearbook Club is in the teachers conference? So, should we be revisiting that? And is it only during the negotiation cycle that that's revisited?
So there's a provision in the contract that allows for ongoing dialogue about this. I do think it would be a healthy thing when we do get to the next negotiation phase. Yes, we want to make sure that we're still creating opportunity for this or easier way to do this. But right now, it takes a lot of time, a lot of people's effort. Where is there an easier mechanism that both for labor and for management that we can resolve some agreements on? How do we do this?
Okay, and times change, right? And interests change. So, maybe different clubs would be, other clubs fees out.
100% accurate.
So I approve of everything, but I just had some questions.
Thank you. Motion to approve. Rob, second. Robert, all those in favor? Bella Associates Additional Services Grant Applications.
Can I tell Mrs. Mullen, just give a brief explanation of what this is?
Yeah, so, actually earlier this year, Governor Hochul ended up announcing there's a grant opportunity for playgrounds in New York State, about $67 million is going to be released, through, managed by DASNY. And, Labella approached us because that was one of the things that we had asked for them to do, is to make us aware of any grant opportunities to help, if something comes along and we help, along our project. One of the areas of playgrounds is a high priority area in our capital project. It also is an area where we're exceeding our maximum cost allowance, planned exceeding our maximum. We are seeing those budgets a little bit higher than we originally expected in the referendum period. So this grant, if we're awarded, we were awarded with an application, could really provide an opportunity to make sure that we're able to continue with all of our playgrounds at the level that we need them to be constructed. So hopefully, Labella looked at the matrix, because sometimes school districts may not, depending, we're not a high need district, so sometimes we may not be eligible, but they look at preliminarily some of the scoring matrix and think we're a good candidate. And the Green Meadow Playground happens to be right in the timeline to fit nicely with that, because it's about to be submitted to SED for approval, which means we have design plans, we have renderings, we have an idea of cost. So that project budget will be developed and it's clean, submitted an application on. The other component of this is obviously UPK is a high priority in the state budget and with the governor's office. And we offer EPKs, and our current playgrounds don't have equipment for ages 2 to 5. And that was something that we identified late in the pre-rec process for the capital project. So there's an opportunity to include that and maybe expand a little bit of what we're already planning with Green Meadow. So if we're awarded with it could be a real advantage for our project because it would allow us to stretch those dollars further across all of our buildings.
What I'm hearing is that if we are awarded the grant, our plan is to use those funds and then add to the construction with those funds. Like I'm wondering if we do get the funds, what's the plan for the additional funds?
So the other thing I didn't mention is there's a 20% match. So our capital project dollars in essence would be used for that match. What would happen is that that grant would be a revenue source to our project. It wouldn't just be the fund. So we're still have to live within our overall spending authority.
Yeah.
But playgrounds are site work, and that site work has a maximum cost allowance, and our financial plan with the capital project has us exceeding that maximum cost allowance. So we have to balance those dollars throughout the project, so if we can avoid, exceeding that, then that will just help, sustain so we're not increasing the overall capital project budget. It may be the balancing between, it basically won't hit our maximum cost allowance portion.
So like what I'm trying to understand, I'm not sure that I follow completely. Like, so I'm definitely hearing that the district expenditures for the project is kind of capped where the voters voted at. And I'm just wondering, when the grant funds come in, like, could you just like, I don't mean this, but I just want to make sure I really understand. Yeah.
So it's basically a revenue source. We will not have to finance as much in that sense.
Okay.
Or it would also allow us to, so the project overall had us exceeding the maximum cost allowance by $18 million. So if, for example, a playground came in over budget by about $500,000, we still need to make sure we're managing within that 18 million.
Yeah.
We may see project savings on the construction side, the non-site work side, like we saw with the roof on phase 1A, that can help us balance that out. So it's basically trying to balance out the buckets to make sure we're maintaining tax neutrality. We're still spending the same. It's a matter of we're seeing challenges within the buckets because of the maximum cost. I hope that helps a little bit.
No, I was making a motion.
Oh, okay. Can I get a motion? Marty, second. Rob, all those in favor? No business. Consent agenda. Any questions or comments? Motion to approve. Marty, second. Rob, all those in favor?
Mr. Jones, congratulations, by the way.
Very much. I appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Business. Any public forum? Board?
Just a couple of things related to the budget. I don't know if we can get ahead of this, but like we get these, questions about class sizes. I don't know if there's some kind of presentation or memo we can post to explain the thinking behind that or how we make decisions or just make it's time that we start to get more and more interest, which is great, but I feel like articulating our positions is also helpful. And then transportation too. I mean, I think there are members of the public who voted for the EV buses because they committed to that. And I feel like we maybe want to think about some good communication as to why we're pivoting for very good reason and the cost and that kind of thing. And I think if you come here, you get that, but it might just be good to sort of put out a district position on that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I love that, and just I think also just the idea of getting the community involved, because sometimes it's like, well, the taxpayer versus the district, or it's but it's like we're all in it together, and this community has high growth, and we're looking at those numbers and all these new families coming in because of the strength of the school district. It's like it's our community school district. We all do these things. It's like we let our community know what we need, like, right? Like, we're trying to keep your taxes lower. We need more state aid. Like, if we can all come together in some way, a scripted way that their communication.
All set, thank you.
I'm also.
All right, motion to adjourn. Kathy, all those in favor?